My name's Kurt Lobb, and I'm the editor.
I'm Matthew Miller, and I'm the producer.
And I'm Matt Johnson. I'm the director of Operation Avalanche, which is a movie about 4 CIA agents who get stationed at NASA to find a Russian spy in the 1960s and instead find out that NASA can't make it to the moon and decide that they're going to fake the moon landing without their boss's permission. Most of the scenes that you see that are set at NASA in the film really are us as a crew pretending to be making a documentary with the same cover that our characters have in the movie. It meant that a lot of our footage was super critical because there's no way you're shooting that again. Like, you get one take at it, and then oftentimes either you're thrown out of the place or there's no way to restage something when you're working with real people. The most important thing for us, because it's a fake documentary, it's not like a standard narrative film, was that we got the technology right. So what that meant was shooting on film, but then when we realized it was going to be impossible to shoot an entire documentary on film, figuring out how we could shoot digitally and then convert that to 16 millimeter, which was a huge process that involved shooting on multiple cameras, working with a colorist, and working with a film artist who would actually convert everything that we shot onto real celluloid. In the end, what you're watching is an actual Super 16 millimeter print of everything that we shot that looks like it's been buried in the ground for 40 or 50 years. Once we started seeing what the film looked like once it got back from 16, that would actually wind up changing how we wanted some of the scenes to play. And also, because this process was so long, there would just be things that we would forget or somehow wouldn't get printed to film, and we'd be like, oh my god, and we have to go back and do all this again. So we would have timelines with 19 or 20 tracks of our converted stuff, our unconverted stuff, our raw red footage underneath that, and then our other digital footage underneath that, and every single one is informing the layer above it. So some of those timelines that we had they're crazy. There'd be like 20 layers, and the top layer you try to keep like your sort of final edit in terms of effects and everything like that, but things were getting lost along the way all the time just because the process was way more complicated than we thought it would be.
Yeah, our video tracks looked a lot more like what they would look like in a sound mix, where you just had literally 25, 30 tracks of different video channels. Because we'd have stock footage from NASA, we'd have VFX shots, we would have
stock footage from NASA in
footage.
different formats too. And Kurt would have all of those things in a timeline with raw red and black magic and just random like YouTube pulls, all literally editing back to back. And we knew we could do that with kind of impunity because that timeline then is all gonna get sent to 16 millimeter. So it didn't actually matter. Like, there is, in terms of resolution, we have YouTube footage in our movie. But because it then gets sent out to black and white 16 millimeter film along the same track as the red stuff that got sent out to the same process, it just winds up looking like flawlessly integrated.
It's like the great equalizer.
I don't think we even knew that Adobe could do that when we started. Like,
With the mixing in the same time?
like perfectly.
Yeah.
Like without it having to do crazy
rendering.
rendering between each one. That saved our ass. We shoot these movies like they are documentaries in many ways. We would capture this stuff, and then Kurt and I are basically trying to figure out, well, where is the story here?
And so our editing process really becomes the writing process.
Big time.
Like, even sending you guys to the Grand Canyon, Arizona, and going on that scout, that wasn't in the initial plan. Like, that evolved out of the edit.
Where a guy at NASA just told us, oh, if you want to go to places on Earth that look like the moon, here's where you go. Not realizing that we're making a movie about faking the moon landing. And so because he said this stuff to us, we're like, oh, we have to make this a part of the film. And so we write this whole sequence where our characters actually visit all these places.
Matt, I think back in the day, used to cut with Premiere, and I had never used it. I just cut in Final Cut. We started thinking we were going to use Final Cut, but that would have required us converting all our 3D footage into Blackmagic to proxy files, and that was going to double the amount of space that we needed, and to tie up a machine making those proxies and all that stuff was just going to be awful. So we knew that Premiere could work with these files raw.
But you want to know what really saved us? I'll tell you the best thing that Kurt and I found out. When we figured out that we could basically just be exporting our sequences and emailing them to one another, since we had the exact same footage, and then opening that sequence and embedding it in our own timeline, that was our breakthrough moment in post. The only reason we were even able to afford to do all this stuff is that we're all students, like we're film students in Toronto, and so we used like Creative Cloud student accounts to do all this. Like, that's what gave us access to all these things, because I remember back when we were kids trying to do this stuff, like the cost of having every single one of these applications and being able to use them seamlessly with one another would be like you know,
Astronomical.
maybe tens of thousands of dollars, I think, even if you go back just to the early 2000s. And so the fact that us as students were able to, you know, use student accounts to do all of this stuff was just a miracle.